fixtures, of course, came out this week, and what an exciting moment it is when you can finally see where you're going to be going on what day and who, most importantly, Mansfield are kicking the season off against. Doncaster it is, followed by Doncaster at home it is, followed by Peterborough away. And it looks a really interesting season ahead. Georgia, what did you make of the fixtures?
Yeah, I think those first three are pretty good, and it's always nice to kind of kick the season off at home. My friend, and he's a reporter as well, he's a Doncaster fan, he messaged me straight away and he was like, Donny vs Stags, first game of the season. So I think that's going to be really interesting. But also the cup game against Sheffield United, very tasty. And also we'll be hoping for a repeat of the FA Cup heroics. So yeah, it's looking good.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. I mean, you always want to start at home where you can. Doncaster at home, it isn't a bad one. They're not a team. They're not a team. They've signed Alfie May as well, so he might get them some goals. They're not a team to take lightly. They finished the season strongly as well after getting themselves out of a difficult situation last season. So they're a team progressing as well. But when I look at Doncaster and I look at Peterborough, you can't take any game for granted in this league. But at the same time, I think the two teams, two games that if you realistically about getting a top six spot, the game that you would have to fancy winning, the games that Mansfield should win, whether they will, obviously, who knows, but the games that they should win, and they certainly need to do, because then 4 games follow: Luton, Reading, Bradford, Huddersfield, 4 tough games there. So it's an interesting start, but then after that, I think you have a really good long run of games against teams that are down in that are likely going to be sort of bottom 8 teams: Burton, Leighton Orient, Wigan, Bromley, blah blah, AFC, Wimbledon, Blackpool, and so on. So it's an interesting sort of first third of the season, Georgia, where Stags can build a bit of momentum up.
It's a mixed bag, isn't it? Like as you say, those first three, so Donny, Peterborough, Luton, um, like winnable, but not a walk in the park at all. Like I think 3 entertaining games for sure there. And then, as you say, you go into Reading, Bradford, Huddersfield, Burton. But then Bromley at home is around the corner. And then not too long after that, it's Notts County at home as well. So plenty to look forward to, all in kind of the
Yeah.
first run. But games that they will be looking at and thinking, we should be attacking this and coming away with 3 points. And then they face Leicester in November at the King Power. So that'll be a tough one, but also a really great away day for fans as well. I mean, I know that obviously the most important thing is coming away with the points, but it'll be a great experience. I'm looking forward to, heading out there. But I feel maybe I'll eat my words. I hope I don't, but I feel confident. I felt confident anyway after last season, after the summer. Then looking at the fixtures, I've got belief that it's going to be a decent season for Nigel and Stags.
Yeah, they're not fixed. That's my overriding view. That when I looked at them, the fixtures, there's a lot of tough games in there, but there are also fixtures in Mansfield that have to. They're nothing to be afraid of. And the Leicester game that you mentioned is an interesting one, because the fixtures for me this season are in blocks. By that I mean you're getting a batch of tough games, and then it follows a batch of what would be deemed easier games against the lesser teams, the bottom 8 teams basically. And then again, it's a roller coaster. And November 28th, Leicester away kickstarts quite a tough sort of 3 months or whatever, where you've got, and I think there's 15 games or whatever in there, where 10 of them would be deemed sort of tough games. You've got 2 Plymouth fixtures, Leicester, Sheffield Wednesday away. There's Luton away in that as well. There's Bradford, and then Huddersfield away on the 20th of February. So that little block there, Oxford's well away in there as well. And obviously the games over the festive period coming thick and fast, the time of the season where injuries bite, suspensions kick in. So it's going to be a tough block of games to come through. But if Mansfield are in with a shout of top 6 after coming away from Huddersfield on the 20th of February, it's a really good run in. Again, it reverts back to games against so-called inferior teams: Orient, Burton Albion, Bromley, Wigan. That's a really good run of fixtures when you're needing points at the end of the season.
Yeah, and then circling back to the ones towards the end of the year, you mentioned the double Plymouth, which is quite close together. And as we established last season, Nigel is absolutely not a fan of any club doing the double. So obviously, if for argument's sake, Stags were to lose against Plymouth at their ground, which is on the 19th of December, the 9th of January, they face Plymouth again at the one call. So then the pressure will be on to not have the double done against them at home. And it's just small things like that that really do play into kind of the narrative of a season. There's tough games coming, there's easier runs coming, but everyone has to play each other. So it's the luck of the draw and the luck of the run, and it's what you make of it, really.
It is interesting that the amount of luck that you do need. As you say, everyone has to play everyone, but it's like it's times that you play these teams. I look back, if you look at Peterborough, when Mansfield played Peterborough, that game had been postponed. I think it was like the third go at getting it on after being called out, postponed twice for international call-ups and whatever. And Peterborough were a better team the third when the game actually was played than when it was scheduled to be played. It's things like that, isn't it? It's an interesting one. It takes me back to my younger footballing days of many years ago, being a Huddersfield fan, and it was in League One as well. And there was on the long, like a club record unbeaten run of, I don't know how many it was. It was something ridiculous, like 40 odd games unbeaten, and yet they still wasn't in the top two because it was endless draws. Draws don't get you anywhere. You've got to win the games, and that is where Mansfield's season is going to be defined for me. It's not a question of is the ability there, because the ability was proven last season, with the long beaten runs, just the record finishes, all that sort of stuff. More importantly, the end of the season where Mansfield were beating teams and banging goals in for fun because their mentality had changed when safety was secured and Mansfield went for the game. Teams, Huddersfield couldn't live with them on that day. Cardiff couldn't live with them in that spell. They didn't need to be afraid of anyone, and they went for it. And you compare it with games against the likes of Burton, of the away game at Peterborough, the away at Leyton Orient, where I think 3-0 draws, where Stags was quite happy to get the point, tick them over, get them nearer towards safety. But a point and satisfaction of extending the unbeaten run isn't going to get you a top six finish.
Well, exactly. And I've just quickly pulled up the results from last season because there was an impressive run towards the end, obviously. Plenty of 0-0 draws, which we've already kind of discussed that had they had less of those, it could be a very different story in terms of where they finished. But I think having gone from being concerned about their safety, a point is a valuable point. But as you talk about mentality, that is now different. So I think if kind of all these 0-0 draws were to come this season, it would be more of a frustration because fans feel they should be winning these games. And with kind of the ceiling being raised now, you want to be aiming towards that. And at what point do you think these are too many draws? Because as you say, a point is not really a lot in the grand scheme of things if you're aiming high. But if you're trying to survive, a point is everything.
So absolutely. It's a different scenario this season, in my view, in terms of, obviously the expectations are different, but off the field with the fans, and I guess in the dressing room as well. The goal is clear. Everyone wants a top six finish. That comes with a lot of different pressures. Like we mentioned in the previous show, having to actually go and win the game instead of getting being satisfied with the draw, having to push when it's 75 minutes and you're still 0-0, and you have to start pushing and going for that win, or you go in to a tricky away game, and then you go into like Oxford somewhere and you need to win rather than setting up and being happy to take a draw. And if you get the win, brilliant. Different scenario.
Yeah, and round about before Stags went on their impressive run that took them all the way up to 10th, there was a real cluster of teams, not necessarily in a relegation battle, but mathematically at threat of dropping into the bottom four. And there was a good chunk of teams who were all kind of fighting the same battle and probably all thinking like it's not the most glamorous football, but we'll take a 0-0 point any day just to put that extra daylight between us and the bottom to say that, okay, we can breathe, we're safe. And now, again, the mentality and the aim has switched. So
it certainly makes for more interesting football when you look at them sort of games at the end of the season where Stags are going for it. But at the end of the day, I think for me, football is very black and white. It's all about 3 points. You don't matter how you get it. And yeah, you want to go and you want to go and you want to be entertained. You want to see Mansfield win 3-0, play great football or whatever. But Stevenage fans aren't going to be moaning. They didn't play the best football, but they got playoffs. That's all that matters. You're not going to moan. If Mansfield play tedious football all season, but finish fifth or sixth or whatever, no one's going to complain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even as far up as the Premier League, there's been. But you look at Arsenal. You know, there are so many non-Arsenal fans who were saying it was a really boring Premier League win. Ask me which Arsenal fan cares how they won the title. As you use Stevenage as an example. That's like, so for argument's sake, Stags get top six, but they played a lot of quite drab and boring football to get the odd 1-0 win, like fluke goals or whatever. No one's going to reflect on that and go, well, we didn't deserve top six. They're not going to care because they got top six. So it's how you get it over the line, and however means necessary.
I'm going to do you a favour. I'm not going to ask you the infamous question of either going to finish sixth or not. We'll save that for another week when we know a bit more how it all pans out. I think that's us done for another week. So thank you very much for your time viewing us, and we hope you've enjoyed what you've been listening to, and we will see you guys next week.